Our market monitor guest tonight says the political crisis in Washington is, quote, man-made, and investors should look beyond that and invest for the long term. He's Jack Albin, Chief Investment Officer at BMO Private Bank. Nice to see you again, Jack.
Thank you, Susie.
All right, so what if things get a little dicey on Wall Street and we start seeing some big sell-offs, which we haven't seen so far? Are you still telling investors sit tight?
Yeah, I think for now, and I think, you mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, that it's really sort of a binomial decision. If you believe that the government will ultimately default on its obligations, then you probably don't want to own anything, including risk assets. But on the other hand, if you think they will ultimately kind of work their way through this, and there is somehow light at the end of this tunnel, then probably holding risk assets like equities probably makes sense through here.
Jack, reaching for yield these days has been a dicey prospect because, as we all know, the higher the yield, the greater the risk. And in a low interest rate environment, where do you go these days to find that income?
You're absolutely right, Bill. I mean, with the Fed injecting $85 billion a month into the market, what it's doing is it's keeping interest rates artificially low and kind of trying to push up inflation. And for those savers are looking for yield in here. And so there are a couple ways we found some yield. One is through bank loans, through an exchange traded fund with a ticker symbol BKLN. Bank loans are just loans that banks typically make to their customers. But the interesting thing about bank loans is that they're floating rate. They're LIBOR-based, meaning that if interest rates do go up, that the rate that you get on your holding will rise along with it, so that way you won't feel stuck in a rising rate environment holding longer-term fixed rate obligations.
Now, on that ETF, Jack, that you were just talking about, BKLN, the stock has been pretty much in this $30 range for a while. If someone were to buy that now, what kind of gains can they expect looking ahead?
Again, we're not looking to hit home runs with BKLN. What we're really looking for is just solid, consistent yield. And, at 3 or 4%, it's a pretty good place to be, given that, overnight paper and short-term bonds are virtually zero right now.
But
I actually like the fact that it's not moving around very much.
That one's yielding 4%, as you said. But here's one that's got 6.7% yield, PGX. Tell us about that one.
Sure. PGX is a little riskier, Bill. It is an investment in preferred stock. And interesting thing about preferreds is it is a fixed rate equity that trades like a long-term bond. And so the concern here is if you reach for this 6% yield, you could suffer if interest rates rise. So what I'm recommending is we actually pair that up with with TBF, which is really, I call it an inverse to treasuries, meaning that this is a security that actually rises in value if interest rates go up. So if you believe that preferred stocks will fall as interest rates rise, this thing will pick up the slack and put it both together. You get a nice coupon and some principal stability. So you end up with roughly, I'm going to say, instead of the 6% yield, you end up with around 4% yield,
right.
But you have very low interest rate risk.
Okay, real quickly, one other ETF you're recommending, which is a play on Europe, is FEU. This is the Stocks Europe 50 ETF. Tell us quickly, in a half a minute, why you like it.
Sure. Thanks, Susie. Yeah, so these are the largest, most recognizable names in Europe, like Nestle and other big drug companies and so forth. And really the theme here is we're just trying to play on a recovery that's going on in Europe. We're starting to see a sense that they're breaking away from this long funk. And we're not looking for off to the races here, but we do think there's good value there, and these large companies should benefit.
Okay. All right. Any disclosures to make, Jack?
I own all of it, so and so do our clients.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Jack Albin, he's Chief Investment Officer at BMO Private Bank.